The Maternal Thread by C.J. Van Pletsen. Ashes. By dawn, they were gone from Léopoldville. The city's roofs steamed under a gray lid, and the smell of last night's gunpowder had already turned domestic, folded into the morning like coffee. False names sat inked in their papers, the letters exact and unassuming. The packet lay sealed in oilcloth and strapped against Uriel's chest, where the heart pounds honesty into lies. Each beat seemed to affirm it, not fear reverence. They crossed into Brazzaville in a pirogue painted with saints whose eyes had been rubbed away by the river's fingers. The Congo moved beneath them with the indifference of an old god broad, brown, muscled by rain. It did not hurry. It did not forgive. The oarsman wore a cap bleached to the color of bone, and spit into the water as if bargaining, the way men do who have learned that gods listen more carefully to impatience than to hymns. Between the two cities, the river rolled like judgment, separating mirror images that refused to admit they recognized themselves. Léopoldville behind them still slept with one eye open. Brazzaville ahead already bargained for the day. Women on the shore laughed like someone had remembered the punchline at last. Children ran, unafraid of thunder and daylight. A man in a threadbare suit counted notes beneath an umbrella, the money turning transparent where raindrops touched it. Uriel touched the packet again, not to reassure himself it was there, but because he believed the paper might be learning his pulse, and that someday in the mountains, when he needed the packet to be something more than paper, it would remember him and decide in his favor. Bistrița, the Carpathians, December 21st. The words arranged themselves inside him with the solemn order of a liturgy. The solstice, the longest night, the old hinge of the year when darkness completes its apprenticeship and begins imperceptibly to seed. Zuriel's map burned behind Uriel's eyes, the 8-point star scribed in copper thread, the Lion of Judah at its center, the points radiating into relics and trials. Congo had been root and reliquary. Now came the mountains, the chalice, the disc. He had seen the star only once without its covering cloth. Zuriel had unrolled it on a table that smelled of citrus and varnish, and the threads had caught the light like a net catching small suns. 8 for the sons of the promise, Zuriel had said, not meaning sons alone, not meaning sons at all. Center the lion so the circle won't collapse. Uriel had pretended to understand then, the way the young pretend to own a house because they've memorized its rooms. The oars creaked. The river spoke around their hull like a tired teacher. Samuel sat opposite Uriel, watching him rather than the shore, recognizing the way his friend's gaze had turned inward. He had learned to trust that look. The one that meant memory not yet earned was flowing backward into Uriel, as if the blood had opened a door and invited the future to step through first. Tell me, Samuel said softly, so the oarsman would hear the weather and not the words. What does it want from us, the star? Uriel smiled, because Zuriel would have approved of the verb. Want, not mean, not require. Desire has a way of telling the truth, irony cannot. It wants to see if the roles can love one another, he answered. Flame without shield is wildfire. Shield without orb is a fort that never opens its gates. Orb without flame is a lamp in a sealed room. Zuriel, he never trusted objects so much as the way people might bear them. Samuel tapped his chest with 2 fingers, a salute he'd learned at a funeral he'd been too young to attend. And if we fail to love, the relics will find other names to answer to. Uriel said it without bitterness, and that alarmed him more than fear. Prophecy, properly understood, is not iron. It is water, and water will find a root. We'll choose the easier soil if the stubborn stone refuses its shaping. But even as he thought it, another thought moved under it like a steady fish. We were gathered for this. Not dragged, gathered. Zuriel had chosen laughter for Samuel, chosen that wild grin to be their weather when the sky turned vindictive. He had chosen Uriel's quiet, not to sanctify silence, but to train him to hear. He had chosen Lyora's hiding, not to diminish her, but to let absence sharpen a new kind of presence. The prophecy always adjusts, but it does not apologize for how. On the Brazzaville shore, a customs officer flipped through their papers while a goat nibbled the damp hem of his trousers. He stamped without looking up. The stamp thudded twice once for each name they were not, and the echo followed them like a ghost with an appointment it intended to keep. The day unrolled in fugitive measures, a taxi whose bench seats had learned every human posture, a market where bananas hung like question marks, a church whose doors had been painted the color of sky, and shut against it. Samuel slept in 10-minute increments like a soldier who trusts the next 10 minutes more than he trusts tomorrow. Uriel didn't sleep, not exactly. He drifted. In that drifting, he saw Renard's pale eyes again. Not cruel, not even particularly angry, merely bright. The hunter will follow. He began to see it clearly, the way blood remembers what the mind cannot. Renard was not simply chasing. He was meant to. He was part of the scaffolding that lets a temple stand while the stones are learning how to be weight. The enemy Zuriel had known must rise to test the flame and the shield. Without the hunter, the hunted never learns the shape of its speed. Without refusal, consent is a rumor. Renard's call Schmidt had been more accurate than he knew. He wasn't calling Uriel by a single man's name. He was invoking a line, an old coaxial running through uniform and vineyard and altar. Renard believed he was drawing Uriel back into a lineage of obedience. In truth, he was confirming which line had ended and which had not. They reached the airfield, where the corrugated hangar roofs wore last night's rain like badges. The pilot flicked his cigarette into a puddle, and the puddle swallowed the ember as if taking sacrament. Paperwork murred and murmured. Currency moved like fish. The plane's propellers began to count the seconds. The packet knocked softly against Uriel's heart, asking for attention like a child. Samuel lifted his duffel and grinned sidelong. "You think he'll leave Léopoldville alone now that the joke's over?" "Renard?" Uriel shook his head. "Legion men dislike untidy endings. He will want the scene arranged so that the body and the narrative agree." "Let him arrange flowers," Samuel said, and then quieter. "I'll be between you and the muzzle." "I know," Uriel answered. He didn't try to refuse the gift. To deny a vow is to insult the altar at which it was laid. Instead, he rested his palm against Samuel's shoulder, feeling there the litany of previous blows, the body's quiet record-keeping. Zuriel had taught them both to bless by touch when words were too conspicuous. He lifted his hand, and the blessing went on without him. The plane lifted. The land fell away into a map the colonizers would recognize, and the people would not. The river wrote its long sentence into the earth, pause marks of sandbars, parenthetical islands. Clouds gathered into councils, white-robed and stern. Uriel pressed his head against the window and watched distance make mercy out of ugliness, turning shanties into texture, barbed wire into hairline, wounds into abstract geometry. He refused the mercy. He repeated the names silently: Léopoldville, Brazzaville, Katanga, Angola, names that had lived under other names. names layered like palimpsests until the paper was tired of receiving. He slept then, or fell into something shaped like sleep. In that dreamless place he felt Zuriel's presence the way one feels a stovetop long after the flame has been turned off. Heat still persisting as a fact. He remembered Zuriel's hand over the map, the 8 points, the lion asleep and unafraid. Covenant is not optimism, Zuriel had said once, the way a man might state the barometric pressure. It is the stubborn refusal to misremember who we are to one another. When he woke, Samuel was watching the clouds as if they were evidence. The pilot's radio clicked and cracked. Europe waited somewhere beyond that blue distance, nursing its long ache, pretending history is a museum. Uriel tightened the strap that held the packet against him, and the paper answered with a small complaint. He soothed it with his palm. "It will be winter," Samuel said, as if reporting on a friend's health. Uriel nodded. "The longest night," he did not add. And then the turn. But he felt it, felt the way darkness, in finishing itself, concedes light not by defeat, but by completion. Bistrița, the Carpathians, the council grounds of the Brotherhood, where men had once argued about which laws could instruct the wind, the place where the tables of the Anakim had last been seen, stone that remembered a language that earth seldom hears spoken aloud. The disc, Samuel tried the word in his mouth, like fruit you've never tasted. The seal, Uriel murmured, letting the old nouns arrange themselves. The chalice gives vision, but the disc proves covenant. The chalice is flame's inheritance. The disc is stone's promise. Zuriel hid it in the old roots. Leia's endurance carved in stone. He said Leia's name and felt her like a weather, not a woman. The patient pressure that makes bedrock out of silt. Samuel chuckled under his breath. "Every time you talk like that, I want to light a candle, and also pack extra ammunition." "Both are sensible," Uriel said, and their smiles held long enough to count as a chosen omen. They flew, and the world below rearranged itself into an answer they could not yet read. Somewhere behind them, Renard stood at a window and looked at the same river they had crossed, seeing not a god, but a ledger. He would follow. He was built for it. The prophecy needed him, as scaffolding needs the wind to prove itself necessary. Uriel let that knowledge settle beside the packet. Neither comfort nor threat, merely architecture. Toward afternoon, the sky thinned to a winter color no one had taught this latitude. The pilot dropped his wing and the horizon slid, a blade drawn slowly out of sheath. Samuel dozed upright with his mouth open, indestructible as boys are when someone is watching over them. Uriel kept watch, because that is what the flame does when the shield rests. He guards the guard. He pressed the packet once more, and the words returned with the steadiness of a bell struck in a cloister, in blood, in ash, in silence, in fire. He tested each against his tongue the way a sommelier tests for oak, for smoke, for the memory of rain that once fell on the hillside where the vine learned to trust the cliff. The game Zuriel had set in motion was unfolding exactly as written, and also not. That was the trick of it. Prophecy is a loom that permits improvisation. The thread may stray so long as it knows how to re-enter the pattern. Liora hidden, yes, but never absent. Samuel laughing, yes, but never careless. Uriel burning, yes, but never devouring. And Renard with his pale eyes, his legion scars, his tidy hunger, the necessary opposition, the angle against which courage discovers itself to be more than adrenaline. So they went on toward a date already humming at the back of time, toward mountains whose roots had memorized emperors, toward the place where stones keep secrets for as long as men know how to ask questions in the right tone. Uriel set his shoulders to the coming cold and felt Samuel's elbow bump his as the plane shuddered in a crosswind. They did not speak. It was not silence. It was agreement. And thus he entered the next chapter of his inheritance with the shield at his side, the packet warm against his heart, and the knowledge that the path had been laid not to bind him, but to teach him how to choose within it, in blood, in ash, in silence, in fire.